I started this photography channel aiming it at people like me, those of us that are over 40, have kids, other responsibilities, and are looking at the next stage of our lives wondering if we could take photography to a professional or semi-professional level. But we're faced with challenges that the 20-somethings aren't. We've got kids, we've got work, we've got mortgages, maybe we're even starting to look after our aging parents. And once you hit 40, you just wake up sore and your energy levels aren't what they used to be. And your ability to learn and retain things, it's just not quite as sharp. But we do have a couple of things that the 20-year-olds don't. We have other skills, and instead of going to university and partying it up and wasting our time, we have a drive to learn and an appreciation of our age and how quickly time goes. So today's episode is aimed at those of us who want to up-level our photography, not just quickly, but strategically, to make the most of our time and other skills. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if this is the first time YouTube's introducing us, my name's Tracy from Red and the Wolf Photography. And instead of trying to cram all of this into one giant episode, I'm going to break it down over the next couple of weeks, covering topics like technical ways you can up-level your photography immediately, and that'll be today's episode, thinking more strategically and being more discerning about what and how you learn and how you're going to achieve that because our time availability is minimal, identifying your other skills that will feed into creating your photography business the way that you want it, or at the very least taking it to a more professional level, and practical ways to work around your health and time restrictions, as all sorts starts to fall apart when you're over 40, but you're still expected to achieve more. Now I suggest being more strategic with these to make the most of your time. Take time to do each one and go out with one objective for each shoot so that you can get specific results with a specific target. So often, and this really resonates with me, I would just go out and shoot. And I'd get some good ones, but so many of them, they just didn't look right, and I couldn't exactly figure out what it was that I was doing wrong. And out of 20 photos, there would be one that looked really good, but they were all kind of the same. So what was it about that one specific photo that stood out over and above the other 20? So test them out one at a time so you can learn the specific lessons. Number one, get a different perspective. I know that for many of us, especially once you're over 40, things start to go crunch when you try and kneel down or sit up or anything really. But physically moving yourself up and down can give a completely different perspective. That can give you a completely different shot than if you're just standing and shooting exactly what you see. Like, consider laying down in a forest and just looking straight up, or getting down low to the ground and taking all your photos from less than 1 foot off the ground. Like, what are you seeing now that maybe you didn't see before? And it sounds really silly, but when my son was new, I used to lay with him on the floor and just look at the things he looked at and touch the carpet with him. And he saw the world from such a different perspective. I mean, when was the last time you laid down and played with the carpet? You just don't have those experiences anymore, and you don't see the world from that level. So take a day and go out and make all of your photos from less than 1 foot and see what kind of shots you get. Number two, decide on a set focal length and then move your body. This kind of moves on from number one. So choose a set focal length, like say 50 millimeters for example. So instead of zooming in and out with your camera, physically move backwards and forwards. It challenges you not only to not rely on your zoom, but also to take photos that you wouldn't otherwise normally take. If you're usually somebody that uses zoom, when you're forced not to, it does give you a different perspective. Like for example, if you always have your nifty 50 lens on, then swap it out for a 70 to 200 and then push it all the way to the end so you've only got a 200 millimeter. How differently are you going to see the world? The truth is, you'll literally see the world through a whole different lens. So often in photography, when we get started, we want to play with all the settings, but then when we find something that works for us, we tend to get in a rut. So by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, it opens up a whole new world of creative possibilities. Number three, turn the guidelines on your camera. That's the little sort of tic-tac-toe board. And then do this test. Place your subject on every one of the 4 intersecting lines and see how the photo comes out differently. And make sure that your subject basically stays the same, because then when you look at them in post-production, you can see what worked and what didn't, and it'll help you identify which of those thirds makes the most sense for that type of photography. If you have a horizon, try placing it on the bottom third and then place it on the top third, and then try placing it in the middle, and then turn your camera the other way and do the same thing. Place it on the bottom third, the middle, and the top third. Then do a bunch of random ones everywhere except where you should do them. And then at the very end, take them all home and look at the 20 odd photos that you took and review them and see what worked and what didn't. And the other thing is, try this with a bunch of different subjects. Like try this with a portrait, try this with a landscape photo, and just see what the difference is, and what works for landscape may or may not work for portrait, and vice versa. Number 4, go on a lines and frames expedition. Leading lines is not specifically a photography rule, but it's a suggestion to improve your composition. If you consider every photo kind of like a story, the leading lines are what is pointing you towards the main subject. So just go out and look for lines. That's all you have to do. Roads, fences, paths, even if they're winding, it's still leading you. It can still point you in a direction. And as you get better with this, you could start doing things like using angled staircases or larger buildings. Or consider window frames as an example for framing your subject. Like really pointing out exactly this is exactly what I want you to be looking at. And think about, it's not just things like window frames. You could use holes in a fence or the branch of a tree. Like where else could you find frames to really nail in that subject? Number 5, start working with depth. One of the standout features of really good photographers that I've personally found is they have this amazing ability to work with depth. So in other words, look for situations where there's something in front of the camera, and then there's your subject, and then there's a background in the camera. It can make such a big difference to the end story when you've got context around your subject. Now I'm just going to interrupt our regularly scheduled programming here, and this isn't sponsored, but I wanted to point out how important it can be to surround yourself with other photographers that inspire you. And when you're sitting and chilling, having coffee table books to flip through instead of crappy magazines is a great idea. Up-level what's around you, up-level your game. So I wanted to share 3 books that I've been wanting to get for a while to put on my coffee table, and I thought that they might be a great inspiration for you as well. The first one is Jeff Bridges' Pictures, and yes, we are talking about the actor here. He has an incredible set of photos. The second one is James Popsey's Human Nature, which you can see behind me. And the third one is Memento by Evan Ranft, and I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly, but he is both a photographer and a YouTuber as well, and I'll make sure I put all those links in the description below. It's a beautiful way to support other photographers, a fantastic way to keep yourself inspired, and as the old adage goes, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. Imagine if you were the sum of the 5 photographers that you admired the most. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled content. Number 6. What's the story you're trying to tell? Part 1. Now before you snap your camera next time, consider, what is the story I'm trying to tell here? Every photo has a story, even if it's just basic brand photography. The story of that would be, you should buy this, or you need this now. So you show its best side, you show its correct colors, you show the obvious visual features, and then when you move into something like lifestyle branding, you're actually showing the benefits of what it is by putting that item, whatever it might be, into a lifestyle setting so that people understand, well, this is not just an inhaler, it's used for keeping people alive, or something along those lines. I mean, even if you're just taking children's portraits, you're creating a snapshot of that moment in their life for those parents. I mean, the story doesn't have to be for everyone. It could just be a story just for that moment. Number 7, what's the story you're trying to tell? Part 2. As you're taking the photo, while you're considering the story that you're telling, consider the editing you may like to do to this. Is it going to be black and white? Do the colors have to be perfect? Is it going to be a beautiful, slightly vintage, hazy, so you feel nostalgia when you look at it? Like for example, if you take a photo of a building, you could take it as accurately as possible for, say, a real estate photo. But you could also take it with the intention that you're going to desaturate it a little bit and make it reminiscent of Christmases over summer at grandma's house. Or maybe you're looking to add it to others in a collection that you're making where you're looking for specific colors. So knowing how you're going to use that photo in post-production could alter how you're taking it. So have a think about your editing. And that leads me to number 8. 8. There are a million editing tutorials on YouTube, like how to make your photos look light and airy, or how to make them look moody, or how to give them a nostalgic feel. So my suggestion is go out and snap 10 random photos of different subjects in different lighting situations. And then go and find 10 different editing suggestions on YouTube and try them all out on one of the photos, turn them into a preset, and put them on across the 10 photos that you've taken. And then what do you like? What don't you like? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? And also, when it comes to things like presets or editing styles, they're going to be slightly different depending on what the lighting situation is. I think it's a bit of a fast track way to find out the styles of editing that you like and the styles of editing you really don't like. Number 9, think about how the photos make you feel. In films, people, objects, and camera angles are really specific. So for instance, if one person in a scene is higher physically in the shot than the other, it's indicating that they are in the more powerful position. And it could be really subtle. It could be like one person slouching in a chair and the other person sitting upright. Or there might be colors that they use or specifically don't use. Or a great example of this is actually a Dutch angle. And a Dutch angle is where they take the camera and they turn it sideways, and it's meant to make you feel like discombobulated. Or that something's just not quite right. And they use it a lot in things like car crashes, or when somebody's about to have a car crash, or horror movies. So it just makes you feel like everything's off center. We're not looking at it properly. Ultimately, it's a really specific choice to evoke a really specific emotion. So this works for things like if you're looking up at your subject, you're making them larger than life. Or are you looking down on your subject? And drone shots are a great example of this, and it gives you like a perspective, a bigger picture. I mean, how do you feel about close-up shots versus full frame shots? Photos can tell a story, but they can also evoke feelings. Think about it when you see a photo of a child mid-laugh. You just want to smile. It just makes you feel happy. Or if you see a photo of death and destruction, you just feel the depth of that. And I'm not saying that every photo you take has to have the most amazing emotional range, but what I am saying is take it into consideration. What emotion is this actually generating? And number 10, be specific about your subject. If your subject is your child, and you've got them against a background and that's the only thing in the shot, then it's really, really easy to go, the child is the subject. But what about a landscape shot? What could be possibly so interesting that it's going to make somebody stop and really pay attention to it? One of my favorite photographers and YouTubers is James Popsees, and he captures landscapes in the most intriguing ways. And when you look at his work, you go, that's what made him take the photo. Like, it's really interesting. There's always a really specific subject in his photos, and it's amazing, and it makes you want to sit and look around the rest of the photo. And the subject could be as simple as a random sheep in a field, or the fog coming down over the mountains. But it's really, really clear what he wants you to look at. I just love the storytelling in his photography. The truth is, when we start out doing photography, it's a lot of flowers and random photos and close-ups of weird and wonderful, like, you know, everything. And then there's all the learning, like how to use Lightroom or Photoshop. Not to mention all the other technical questions of why are my photos not coming out sharp? Or how does that photographer do that? Honestly, the fastest way to up-level your photography is just to be really specific when you're learning, which is not always easy when you're doing it on your own. You don't know what the next step is sometimes, and you just don't know what you don't know. So start with these 10. And I would even suggest to go as far as getting a journal or a scrapbook and really taking some notes on what you did, or printing out some of your photos and really analyzing them, because that's how you're going to learn the best. You don't have to go overboard with it, but having a genuine understanding of why you're taking a specific photo to get a specific result is half the battle. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'm always happy to answer them to the best of my ability, or at the very least point you in the direction of somebody else that can help you. And if you've got this far, the YouTube monster is always hungry for likes and subscribes. So if you could do the YouTube things, that would be really appreciated. And if you're the kind of person that needs to know things first, the notification bell is for you. And I'll see you guys in the comments.